Daniel had always believed that some moments in life came with warnings, subtle hints woven into the fabric of an ordinary day. But that evening felt different from the moment he stepped into the house. The lights were dimmer than usual, the air unnervingly still, and the scent of lavender candles, usually relaxing, felt oddly staged. Marissa was sitting on the couch, her hands tightly clasped together, her leg bouncing rapidly against the carpet. She looked up at him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He set down his keys and studied her carefully. "Rough day?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. She shook her head too quickly. "No, I mean yes. Can you sit down for a moment? I need to talk to you." Those words alone raised Daniel's heartbeat. In all their years together, whenever she opened a conversation with that tone, it meant something heavy was waiting. He sat across from her, leaning forward, arms resting on his knees, ready to listen. Marissa swallowed hard, glancing at her phone on the table. Her fingers hovered over it as if she were debating whether to grab it or push it away. She finally looked up, eyes shimmering with hesitation. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately," she began. "About our marriage." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Okay, what's going on?" She took a deep breath. "I think we might be stuck, emotionally, maybe even physically. And maybe we need something new. Something different." Daniel blinked, not sure what she meant. Different how? Marissa hesitated for several seconds that felt like minutes. Then she exhaled and forced the words out. "I think we should invite someone to join us." In bed. The room fell silent, as if the air itself froze in disbelief. Daniel stared at her, waiting for the punchline, some hint that she was joking, teasing, or testing him. But her expression didn't waver. It wasn't playful. It was anxious, tangled with fear and uncertainty. He felt the floor drop beneath him. "Marissa." "What? Why would you even think that?" His voice cracked with confusion more than anger. She quickly stood up, pacing the room, wringing her hands. "I know it sounds crazy. I know it's not something we've ever talked about. But I've been thinking about us. How distant things have felt. How routine everything has become. And I spoke with someone, Lena, and she thinks maybe this idea could help us reconnect." Daniel's chest tightened again, but for a different reason this time. "Lena? This was her idea?" "No," Marissa said, too fast. "I mean, it came up in conversation. She didn't push anything. I don't know. I thought maybe it would fix things." Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. To him, their problems were the kind that required conversation, effort, maybe counseling, not bringing a third person into their most intimate space. He felt blindsided, hurt, and strangely hollowed out as Marissa watched him silently, waiting for his reaction. Daniel realized this wasn't just a bizarre suggestion, it was a signal that something deeper, something hidden, was wrong beneath the surface of their marriage. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains, but nothing about the new day felt bright. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, staring into the swirling surface as though it might give him answers. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, Marissa's trembling voice replayed in his mind, along with the impossible request she had made. When Marissa finally entered the kitchen, she looked exhausted, two dark circles under her eyes, shoulders hunched, her steps hesitant. She paused when she saw him, as if unsure whether she was welcome in her own home. "Can we talk?" Daniel asked quietly. She nodded, sliding into the chair opposite him. The silence stretched between them until Daniel finally spoke. "I need to understand why you asked for something like that. And I mean the real reason." Marissa's gaze darted toward the window. "I told you. I thought it could help us." "No," Daniel said gently but firmly. "That wasn't the full truth. You were shaking last night. You could barely look at me. This wasn't about spicing things up. Something else is going on. Marissa's composure cracked almost instantly. Her shoulders slumped and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't want to tell you everything because I knew how it would sound. Tell me anyway. She twisted her fingers together, the motion frantic and anxious. Lena has been going through a lot lately. Her breakup ruined her emotionally. I've been trying to be there for her, to support her. And I guess I just let myself get pulled into her problems. She kept saying she felt unwanted, unloved, invisible. And hearing her talk like that, it triggered something in me. Daniel frowned. Triggered what? Marissa looked up, eyes glossy. My own fears. My insecurities. Things I thought I had buried. She inhaled shakily. Lately, I've been feeling like I'm fading too. Like you're so busy, so stressed, so distant, and I'm just here. Taking care of everything, being strong for everyone, and slowly feeling like I'm disappearing. Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He had been drowning in work for months, barely noticing how silent their evenings had become. So, Daniel said slowly, you thought asking me to bring someone else, your friend, into our marriage would fix that? Marissa winced. It sounds ridiculous now. I know. But when Lena was talking about feeling unwanted, I saw myself in her. And I thought that maybe if you helped her feel better, somehow it would pull us together too. I don't know why I thought that. I wasn't thinking clearly. Daniel leaned back, absorbing everything. A cold realization washed over him. Her request hadn't been a fantasy or a lack of love. It was a manifestation of something deeper: fear, loneliness, and emotional confusion she didn't know how to express. I wasn't overreacting last night, he said softly. But you weren't either. You're hurting. You feel alone. And instead of telling me that, you tried to fix the feeling with something extreme. Tears finally spilled down Marissa's cheeks. And she whispered, I didn't know how to ask for help. Daniel reached across the table and gently took her hand. Then ask now. Because we're not fixing this with someone else. We fix it together. The days following their difficult conversation felt like walking through fog, thick, cold, and disorienting. Daniel tried to resume normalcy, going to work, doing chores, and keeping his tone gentle whenever he spoke to Marissa. But something was off. The emotional distance between them wasn't closing. It felt as if something deeper had shifted inside her after their talk. Something she wasn't ready to expose yet. Marissa became quieter, more distracted. She spent long hours in their bedroom with the door slightly cracked, scrolling through her phone, responding to messages with the faintest smile or a nervous bite of her lip. Daniel didn't want to pry, but every time her phone vibrated, her eyes flashed with a mixture of guilt and urgency that made his stomach twist. One Thursday evening, as Daniel returned home early, he heard her voice from the hallway. She was in the living room with her back turned, speaking in a hushed, strained tone. He didn't intend to eavesdrop, he only froze because of the words he heard. He didn't agree. I told you he wouldn't. I don't know what to do now, Lena. Daniel's breath hitched. Lena. The same friend Marissa had mentioned during the request. The same woman tied to every confusion of the past week. He stepped silently back toward the kitchen, not wanting her to catch him listening. His heart hammered. When Marissa ended the call and appeared moments later, she nearly jumped when she saw him. You're home early, she said, forcing a smile that barely disguised how shaken she was. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, traffic was light. The lie felt sour in his throat. But he wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. He needed the right moment, the right clarity. That moment came the next night. They were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the TV flickering between them, but neither watching. The tension was unbearable, like a rope stretched too tight. Daniel finally muted the screen. "Marissa," he said quietly, "are you hiding something from me?" Her eyes widened with a flash of fear, real fear. "No, why would you think that?" He took a breath. "I heard you yesterday, talking to Lena." Her face crumpled instantly. She closed her eyes, pressing her palms against her temples as though the truth physically weighed her down. "Daniel, I didn't want you to hear that." "Then tell me now," he urged. "No more half answers. No more vague explanations. Are you and Lena involved in something I should know about? Emotionally? Secretly? Anything?" The tears came fast this time, pouring over her cheeks with sudden, overwhelming force. "No, it's not what you're thinking. I'm not in love with her. I'm not trying to replace you. I'm just lost." She sank into the couch, trembling. "I've been struggling with myself, who I am, what I feel, what I fear. Lena confides in me, and I confide in her. It felt safe to tell her things I was scared to tell you. And that was wrong. But I didn't know how to stop." Daniel sat silently, absorbing every word. For the first time, he understood. Her strange request wasn't a desire, it was a symptom. A cry for help wrapped in confusion and emotional overwhelm. He scooted closer, voice low. "Marissa, tell me everything. All of it. I'm here." That night became the turning point, not because of anger or betrayal, but because Marissa finally allowed her deepest fears to surface. The living room felt heavy after Marissa's confession, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. She sat curled on the far end of the couch, her eyes red and swollen, her hands trembling as she tried to wipe away fresh tears. Daniel watched her quietly for several seconds, not out of judgment but out of heartbreak. This was the woman he loved, and he had never seen her look so small, so scared, so painfully lost. He took a long, steady breath before speaking. "Marissa," he began, his voice calm in a way that surprised even him, "I need you to hear my answer clearly. I'm not angry with you." She blinked, startled. "You're not?" "No." He shook his head slowly. "I'm confused. I'm hurt that you didn't tell me sooner, and that you talked to Lena instead of me. But I'm not angry. You're overwhelmed. You're struggling. And I can see that now." Marissa's lips trembled. "I thought you would yell. Or walk away. Or hate me for even thinking." "Stop," Daniel said gently. He moved closer, leaving space but closing the emotional gap between them. "I'm not going to judge you for being human. But I am going to be honest." She straightened slightly, bracing herself. "I'm not agreeing to what you asked," he said. "Not because I'm jealous. Not because I'm insecure. But because bringing someone else into our marriage physically, emotionally, in any way will destroy us. Not fix us." Marissa nodded slowly, tears falling again, but this time silently. She had expected fury or humiliation. What she received instead was clarity and compassion, a combination that pierced deeper than anger ever could. Daniel continued, his tone firm but gentle. "If something in our relationship is breaking, the solution isn't to add someone else. It's to repair what's broken between us. Just the two of us." She buried her face in her hands. "I should have known. I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid," Daniel corrected softly. "You were scared. You didn't know how to ask for help, so you reached for something extreme. I get it now." She looked up, surprised by his understanding. "So here's what I'm asking," Daniel said. "Let's fix this together. Let's talk. Really talk. And if we need help, we get help from a counselor, from therapy, from anything healthy. Not from dragging another person into our marriage." Marissa's voice cracked. "But what if you think I'm too broken? What if helping me becomes too much?" Daniel reached for her hand, taking it gently. Then we take it one step at a time. No marriage survives on perfection. They survive on honesty and love and the willingness to fight for each other. Her shoulders shook as she cried again, but this time her tears carried relief rather than despair. "I don't deserve how patient you're being," she whispered. "Maybe not," he said with a small smile, "but you're my wife. And marriages aren't saved by punishment, they're saved by truth." In that moment, Marissa realized something she had forgotten. Daniel wasn't just her husband, he was her anchor. And his response, calm and resolute, changed the entire direction of their marriage. The following week marked a quiet but profound shift in Daniel and Marissa's life. They decided together to attend therapy. Their first session felt awkward. Neither knew how to begin, and the room itself seemed too calm for the storm inside them. But the therapist's warm, inviting tone gradually encouraged them to open up in ways they had been avoiding for months. Marissa spoke first, her voice thin, almost disappearing into the stillness. "I didn't come here to defend what I asked for. I know how wrong it was. I'm here because I don't understand myself anymore." The therapist nodded gently. "Then let's explore that. When did you begin feeling disconnected?" Marissa's hands twisted nervously in her lap. "It didn't happen suddenly. It was like a slow freezing inside me. I kept telling myself everything was fine, that I was fine. But every day, something chipped away at me, your late nights at work." She glanced at Daniel, eyes softening. "My loneliness." And then Lena's breakdown. Listening to her pain felt like listening to my own reflection. Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't know you felt that alone." "You weren't supposed to know," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want to seem needy, or weak, or burdensome." The therapist leaned forward. "Where do you think that fear comes from?" Marissa hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "My childhood. My mother left when I was 10. She used to say she felt trapped, like she wasn't enough, like we weren't enough. I spent my whole life trying not to become her. But when I heard Lena break down about feeling unwanted, something inside me cracked. I felt 10 years old again, terrified someone I loved would disappear." Daniel's heart clenched. He had known snippets of Marissa's past, but never how deeply it had scarred her. Never how much those wounds shaped the strange, chaotic request she had made. The therapist spoke gently. "So the idea of involving Lena wasn't rooted in desire or thrill. It was rooted in fear of abandonment." Marissa nodded, eyes shining with tears. "Exactly. I wasn't thinking about intimacy. I was thinking about not losing anyone. I thought that if I kept Lena close, if I didn't let her feel alone, maybe I wouldn't feel alone either. And if Daniel said yes, maybe it meant I wasn't becoming invisible." Daniel reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. "You're not invisible. You never were. I was just too wrapped up in work to see what was happening. That's my fault too." Marissa squeezed his hand weakly. "I felt you drifting. I panicked. And instead of saying I'm scared, I tried to fix it the wrong way." Therapy didn't provide instant clarity, but it opened doors that had been locked, ignored, or painted over for years. With each session, Marissa uncovered the emotional layers she had buried, her fear of abandonment, her struggle with self-worth, her belief that she needed to be perfect to be loved. Daniel confronted his own guilt, his lack of presence, his unintentional emotional distance, his assumption that their marriage could sustain itself without consistent nurturing. Together, they began rebuilding not just the marriage, but themselves. For the first time in months, hope didn't feel fragile. It felt real. Healing didn't happen in a single moment, it unfolded slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night. But for the first time in a long time, Daniel and Marissa weren't walking on opposite sides of the dark. They were moving forward together. Months passed and therapy became a weekly ritual they both valued. Instead of seeing it as a place to fix problems, they began to see it as a space to understand each other. Daniel learned things he never realized he needed to know. How easily Marissa internalized fear, how deeply she carried her mother's abandonment, and how much strength it took for her to admit her vulnerability. Marissa, in turn, discovered truths about Daniel too, how pressure from work had been suffocating him. How he feared letting her down, how he believed he had to be strong at all times, instead of sharing his burdens. These discoveries didn't erase their past struggles, but they created bridges where there used to be walls. At home, small changes began to appear. They set aside one night each week as a connection night, no phones, no distractions, just conversation, laughter, shared stories, and a sense of closeness that had been missing for too long. Daniel made an effort to leave work early whenever possible, and Marissa worked on expressing her needs before they became overwhelming. They created boundaries with friends as well. Especially with Lena, their friendship didn't end, but it shifted into something healthier, less emotionally entangled, more balanced. And no longer entangled with the strain on the marriage. The extraordinary request that had once threatened to break them now felt like a symbol of how lost they both had been. Marissa often found herself replaying that moment, wincing at how desperate and confused she must have sounded. But Daniel would gently remind her, it was a signal, not a sentence. We listened. We learned. We grew. One quiet Sunday morning, as sunlight filtered softly into their bedroom, Marissa rolled onto her side and looked at Daniel with an expression he hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. You know, she said softly, I think your no saved us. Daniel smiled. It wasn't just a no. It was a promise. A promise that I'm here. That we're worth fighting for. She reached out and traced his hand with her fingertips. I thought you would reject me. Or pull away. Instead, you showed me what love actually looks like. Love, Daniel said, isn't about agreeing to everything. It's about protecting what matters. Marissa nodded, tears glistening but not falling. And I finally understand what matters. Their marriage didn't go back to the way it used to be because it became something better. More honest. More resilient. More deeply rooted in understanding. The cracks didn't disappear, but they became filled with truth and effort, forming stronger lines that held them together. Looking back, they realized their story didn't unravel because of a shocking request. It unraveled because they had stopped communicating. And it was stitched back together because Daniel chose compassion over anger. And Marissa chose honesty over fear. Their new beginning wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet. Steady and genuine. And sometimes, that's the kind of ending that changes everything.